The red giant star burned low on the horizon of the fractured world, dyeing the broken plains in crimson hues that gave the impression of molten metal flowing just beneath the surface. In truth, nothing here flowed anymore. The rivers had long dried, the forests had been burned down to the bone, and the cities, once towering monuments of ambition and pride, lay as skeletal silhouettes against the dim dusk. It was on this world that Daniel Aren first stepped out of the landing craft, boots crunching against the ash-like remains of pulverized stone. He inhaled slowly, letting the cracked visor of his helmet filter the desolation into something breathable. Behind him, the others descended. The 8-person team moved wordlessly, their thoughts equally heavy, their mission heavier still. They had come here because humanity needed an answer, one this world was rumored to contain. Rumored, no proof. Only scraps of ancient star maps discovered in a derelict vault drifting beyond the spiral arm, etched with coordinates predating human interstellar travel by thousands of years. Someone had once lived here, someone advanced enough to survive past the collapse of their own epoch. And if they had found a way through catastrophe, humanity intended to learn how. Daniel scanned the ravaged skyline and felt the faint stirring of something both somber and electric. A world dead for millennia radiated the faintest hint of expectation, as if still waiting for someone to listen. He adjusted the pack on his shoulders and began moving toward the ruins of the nearest city. The others followed in a silent column, their steps echoing the weight of unspoken fears about what might be found or might be missing entirely. The ruined city had no name. Perhaps it once did, carved onto plaques or sung in ancient voices, but time had devoured every trace. What remained were spires shattered by forces unknown, avenues chewed to dust by erosion and collapse, and faint geometric carvings along fallen monoliths that suggested an artistry neither human nor easily described. Daniel approached one such monolith, brushing dust from a carved spiral that twisted into angular filigrees. It was beautiful in a way that sparked instinctive tension, too symmetrical to be natural, too chaotic to be artificial by human hands. Amelia Ward stepped beside him, her expression sharpened by curiosity. She was the team's cultural analyst, though she disliked titles, believing they constrained perception. She traced the spiral with cautious reverence. "This was done by minds who thought in different shapes than we do," she murmured. "Not just aesthetically, conceptually. They built meaning into physical geometry." Daniel nodded, but said nothing. Her insights were valuable, but the air here already felt thick with implications he could not yet articulate. They moved deeper into the ruins, the division between day and night blurring under the red giant's weak glow. The city's interior sprawled like the hollowed remains of a once great beast. They found no bodies, no signs of struggle, not even particulate traces of biological remnants. Instead, only absence, an absence so complete it formed its own kind of presence. The more they searched, the more Daniel felt the emptiness was deliberate, not abandonment, extraction, as if the inhabitants had taken something with them or had been taken. Hours passed before they reached what seemed to be the heart of the city, a colossal pyramid-like structure inverted into the ground, its apex buried beneath the surface and its base flaring upward like the petals of a metallic flower turned inside out. The structure pulsed with faint traces of energy detectable only on Amelia's scanning equipment. "It's dormant," she whispered, "but not dead." The others fanned out, documenting, measuring, analyzing. Daniel circled the perimeter, following his instincts. Something about the structure resonated with him, an almost gravitational pull, subtle yet insistent. When he reached the far side, he found a narrow breach in the metal-like exterior, as if something enormous had once forced its way in or out. The edges of the breach glowed with a faint iridescence that defied categorization. He crouched to examine it. The glow shifted in color, reflecting not the environment but something else, perhaps the observer themselves. Before he could call the others, A tremor rippled through the ground, subtle but unmistakable. The team stiffened. Daniel rose slowly, scanning the horizon. Another tremor followed. Then a third. The ground began to hum. Amelia hurried toward him, her voice strained. "Daniel, the readings, this structure is powering up. Something is responding to our presence." Daniel opened his mouth to order evacuation, but the ground shuddered violently, a deep, resonant pulse traveling outward like the heartbeat of a waking titan. A column of blinding light erupted from the structure's center, shooting into the sky with enough force to shake the clouds into spirals. The air crackled with unknown energy that bypassed the team's suits, resonating directly within their bones. Daniel staggered, gripping the nearest fallen slab to maintain balance. Shapes began forming within the pillar of light, fractals folding into themselves, silhouettes that were almost people yet stretched by dimensions human senses could only partially perceive. Amelia cried out, shielding her eyes despite the visor filters. "They're not physical," she yelled. "These are projections, echoes, something." Daniel focused through the haze. The figures emerged fully from the light, hovering several meters above the ground. They had no faces, no limbs, no anatomy. They were constructions, living diagrams crafted of luminous lines, shifting geometry flickering like 1,000 overlapping thoughts. One figure glided forward, its shape stabilizing into a humanoid outline as if for their convenience. A voice emanated not through audio channels but directly into their minds. Not speech, impressions braided into coherent meaning. "You arrive from the younger flame. You carry the hunger that defined us." Daniel stiffened. The others froze, overwhelmed by the direct mental interface. Amelia trembled, fighting to stay upright. Daniel steadied her, then faced the being. "Who are you?" The entity's geometry shifted, expanding then collapsing back into a stable form. "We were the ascended architects. We built worlds, remade suns, stripped galaxies for knowledge. We sought to break the boundary between finite and infinite, and we succeeded at a cost." Daniel's pulse quickened. "What cost?" The projected figure rotated its angular structure, a gesture that felt like sorrow made mathematical. "We consumed too much. The universe remembers what is taken. Our works drew attention from that which devours hunger itself. When the devouring continuum found us, we had already unraveled our own foundation. This world is one of many grave." A coldness spread through Daniel's chest. "The ruins, the absence, the extraction. What happened to your people?" The being folded inward, shrinking as if reliving collapse. "We dispersed ourselves beyond physical states to deny the continuum its feast. We exist only as echoes, warnings, fragments left for those who follow our path." Amelia grimaced, clutching her head as more impressions poured in. "You travel the same trajectory. You expand without restraint. You innovate without caution. You burn through systems like a spark racing across dry fields. You are soon to be noticed." The hum of the structure intensified. Daniel forced himself to remain calm. "We came here seeking answers to help humanity survive, not cause more destruction." The entity elongated slightly, as if scrutinizing him anew. "Your will is noted. But survival requires understanding, and understanding requires burden." The pillar of light dimmed, concentrating into a single point before streaking directly into Daniel's chest. He gasped, collapsing to one knee. The others shouted but were thrown back by the force. His mind expanded beyond itself, visions flooding like a dam bursting, stars collapsing, civilizations burning. Gigantic tendrils of void-like energy sweeping across galaxies, machines the size of moons being torn apart. And amidst it all, the faint silhouette of the ascended architects drifting as luminous dust, scattering themselves into extra-dimensional currents to avoid consumption. He saw humanity's future, the trajectories, the projections, the potential to rise or fall. The moment stretched, then snapped. Daniel screamed as the vision tore free from his mind. Amelia caught him as he slumped forward, trembling violently. The geometric beings flickered, destabilizing. "We have given you the burden. What you do with it will determine your flame's fate. Remember, Expansion without comprehension invites the continuum. Turn your hunger toward unity, not consumption. Transform or perish. The light collapsed inward, the figures dissolved, the structure quieted. Silence draped itself across the ruins. Daniel lay on the ground, breathing hard. The others gathered around him cautiously. Amelia placed a hand on his shoulder. "Daniel, what did they show you?" He swallowed hard, forcing his voice through the tremor still lingering in his chest. "A future we're not ready for. And a threat we can't outrun unless we change everything." The red giant star flickered ominously overhead. Humanity had come seeking answers for survival. Instead, they had found a warning and the beginning of a transformation that would redefine their place in the cosmos. And Daniel knew one thing with a certainty that chilled him to the core. Humanity was already on the path the ascended architects had walked, and the devouring continuum had already begun to turn its gaze toward the younger flame. Daniel woke aboard the starship Resolute Voyager with the residual tremor of the visions still vibrating beneath his ribs, like a distant engine refusing to shut down. The infirmary lights were low, designed to simulate pre-dawn glow, but even in the dim ambience, he could sense the tension pooling in the air. The medical systems registered improved vitals, yet the data felt irrelevant compared to the weight of what he had seen. No equipment in the ship could measure the shape of existential threat. A soft beep alerted him to movement beside his bed. Amelia sat rigidly in a chair, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched as if locked in perpetual confrontation with an unseen enemy. When she noticed he was awake, the lines in her expression softened only slightly. "You were out for nearly 13 hours, she said. Her voice carried fatigue hidden beneath a veneer of composure. "You scared the entire team." Daniel swallowed, throat dry. "I scared myself." Amelia leaned closer, her eyes searching his. "Daniel, what exactly did those beings do to you?" Daniel shifted, the bed's sterile sheets rustling under him. Images from the ascended architect's transmission still flashed behind his eyes, cosmic horrors that defied physical description, civilizations extinguished like sparks, the terrible certainty of something monstrously vast surveying reality for expanding flames of life. "They didn't harm me," he said finally. "They gave me information, warnings, but the scope of it," he shook his head. "It was like trying to contain a star inside my mind." Amelia sat back, gripping the armrests. "The others want answers, but the Command Council will want more than answers. They'll want implications, strategies, contingency plans. They'll want verification, and they'll tear our testimony apart if it doesn't fit their frameworks." Her frustrations simmered like a coiled spring. "We found a long-dead world inhabited by physics-defying entities who communicated through geometric projections and telepathic fractals. No one is going to accept that lightly." Daniel stared at the ceiling, letting the faint hum of the ship systems steady his breathing. "They will accept it," he whispered, "because we don't have a choice. What's coming, it makes all of our debates and politics irrelevant." Amelia was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Tell me what you saw." Daniel closed his eyes. The memory pressed forward like a flood. "I saw galaxies collapsing into strands of matter devoured by void-like structures. I saw civilizations rise to unthinkable heights, only to be shredded by something that feeds on expansion itself. The more a species spreads, the more they innovate, the brighter they burn, the sooner it becomes aware of them. The ascended architects built wonders that dwarfed anything humanity can imagine, and it destroyed them anyway, or forced them to destroy themselves to avoid being consumed." Amelia exhaled slowly, visibly shaken despite her attempt at stoicism. "And humanity is next in line." "Not next," he said, "but visible, noticeable, on the path." He didn't need to elaborate. Humanity had expanded aggressively over the last 2 centuries, terraforming worlds, extracting resources at unprecedented speeds, building megastructures across several star systems. Their presence was no longer subtle. Amelia stood and moved toward the observation pane, where distant starlight scattered across the glass. So what do we do? Stop expanding, withdraw entirely, convince billions of people across dozens of systems to abandon everything and shrink back into obscurity. Daniel let her words hang. The entity, the projection, it didn't say we needed to stop existing. It said we needed to transform, to elevate our understanding, to stop consuming blindly. Amelia looked over her shoulder. That's a vague directive for something capable of extinguishing cosmic empires. It's not a directive, Daniel said. It's a warning. The ascended architects weren't telling us what to do. They were telling us why they failed. Before Amelia could respond, the infirmary door slid open and Captain Raylan strode in. His posture was rigid, his eyes sharp, his voice clipped with the controlled urgency of someone balancing responsibility with rising dread. Aren, Ward, the Council wants a briefing in 2 hours. I need your account finalized by then. Amelia bristled. Captain, he just regained consciousness, and we're approaching the inner systems, Raylan interrupted. Command is already preparing. They want to know whether what we found is a threat, an opportunity, or a delusion. They want data, tangible data. He turned to Daniel. Can you stand? Daniel nodded, swinging his legs over the bed. His muscles felt weak but functional. I'll manage. Good, Raylan said, because what happens in that briefing may determine how humanity responds to whatever this is. He hesitated, a rare crack in his controlled demeanor, before adding, and how they respond to you. The captain exited without waiting for acknowledgement, leaving the door sliding shut behind him with a metallic whisper. Amelia looked at Daniel gravely. They're going to dissect every word we say. We'll tell them the truth, he said. Whether they believe it is another matter. Amelia crossed her arms. Some of them will want to use it, twist it. Others will want to dismiss it as an anomaly. But Daniel, some will want to weaponize it. The idea chilled him. Humanity had always been ingenious in transforming fear into instruments of power. As they left the infirmary and moved through the ship's corridors, crew members paused to watch them. Some saluted. Others simply stared, eyes brimming with rumors and speculation. Word had traveled quickly. The expedition team had triggered something ancient, survived an encounter with unknown intelligences, and returned with one member psychologically marked by phenomena no instrumentation could track. Daniel ignored the stares, focusing instead on the subtle vibration he still felt in his chest, a resonance left behind by the architect's transmission. It felt like a faint frequency, an echo of cosmic knowledge he had no language for. He wondered whether it would ever fade. They reached the briefing chamber, a wide, circular room filled with hollow displays, star maps, and high-ranking officials already engaged in heated debate. Daniel recognized several council leaders, High Strategist Marveran, known for her strict practicality, Ambassador Terran, whose expression always hid multiple calculations, and Chief Scientist Hale, whose appetite for discovery bordered on fanaticism. As Daniel and Amelia entered, the chamber quieted. Marveran gestured to the central platform. Please take your positions. We need clarity, and we need it now. Daniel stepped onto the platform, Amelia beside him, as holographic projectors lit up around them. Marveran folded her hands behind her back. Your report suggests you made contact with non-corporeal entities of unknown classification. Entities claiming to be remnants of a lost civilization far more advanced than ours. Explain this claim. Daniel began recounting the experience, careful to maintain precision. He described the structure awakening, the projections forming, the telepathic communication, the warning, and the visions. Amelia supplemented his recounting with scientific context, energy readings, structural anomalies, geometric harmonics detected by her instruments. The council listened, though their expressions varied: fascination, skepticism, fear, calculation. When he finished, silence fell over the chamber. It was Terran who broke it. You claim these beings indicated humanity is at risk of attracting the attention of a cosmic predator, a devouring continuum. Daniel nodded. Yes. Hale leaned forward dramatically. Did they provide evidence, Coordinates, observable data, models, anything verifiable. They provided visions, Daniel said, information directly transmitted into my mind. Hale's lip curled. So nothing the instruments could detect, nothing that can be replicated or verified. Doctor, Daniel stopped himself, remembering the user's specification for the story. Chief Scientist Hale, we all saw the structure activate, Amelia snapped. We all saw the projections, the readings don't lie. Readings can be misinterpreted, Hale retorted, and psychic impressions are hardly reliable scientific evidence. Terran steepled his fingers. Still, the implications cannot be ignored. Daniel Aren, what exactly do you believe this continuum is? Daniel inhaled slowly. Not a species, not a force of nature, more like a cosmic principle embodied in some form, a predator of expansion, a destroyer of civilizations that consume too much too quickly. I think the architects triggered its awareness and paid for it. Marvren narrowed her gaze. And you believe humanity is now on a similar trajectory? Yes, Daniel said simply. Hale huffed. You expect us to adjust galactic policy based on the metaphysical impressions of one man? Amelia shot him a glare. He's not just one man, he was the focal point of the architect's transmission. Whatever criteria they used to select him, that's another mystery, Hale interrupted sharply. Why him? Why choose a single individual to bear a message instead of presenting tangible information we can analyze? Because they don't exist physically anymore, Daniel said. They barely exist at all. They're echoes, fragments of consciousness. They did what they could. Marvren paced slowly. Suppose this threat is real. What would the architects have us do? Daniel hesitated. Change, transform. Stop expanding blindly, seek unity instead of consumption. A murmur rippled across the council. Terran tilted his head. That sounds more philosophical than actionable. Daniel met his gaze evenly. It sounded like a survival strategy. Hale scoffed, or the dying doctrine of a failed civilization. Enough, Marvren snapped. The chamber fell silent. She turned her piercing gaze toward Daniel. Aren. Your testimony is significant, but unverified. The council will debate its implications. Until then, you and your team are restricted to internal systems. No dissemination of this information until reviewed. Daniel bristled. The public deserves stability, she interrupted, and we intend to preserve it. Debrief concluded. The lights dimmed. Council members dispersed in clusters, their hushed conversations heavy with tension. Amelia turned to Daniel once they were alone. They don't believe you. Some do, some don't. But none of them understand the scale. They can't, Daniel murmured. Not yet. As they exited the chamber, an uneasy realization settled in his chest. The architects had warned him that humanity needed transformation, yet the first reaction of those in power was to contain, control, and politicize the threat. The devouring continuum did not care about politics. It did not negotiate. It consumed. And humanity's path remained unchanged. But something else gnawed at Daniel's thoughts, a sensation he couldn't shake, a faint vibration, a subtle resonance. As if the message was not finished, as if something vast and unseen had felt humanity stir, and was turning toward the flame. The return to Central Command on Solara Prime should have felt like a homecoming, but as the resolute Voyager descended through the shimmering atmosphere, Daniel sensed only the tightening of unseen chains. The capital world was beautiful in the way only meticulously engineered worlds could be, towering crystalline spires, transit streams flowing like liquid light, verdant domes filled with bioarchitected forests. Humanity's ambition pulsed through every structure, every glowing artery of its vast cities. It was a triumph of innovation, a declaration that nothing lay beyond human reach. But after what Daniel had witnessed on the dead world, the grandeur felt ominous, like a bonfire burning too brightly in the dark, a beacon for something that hunted flames. As the ship settled into the landing cradle, Amelia stood beside him, her expression unreadable. She had always admired Solara Prime's aesthetic harmony, but now her eyes held a distant caution. It's strange, she murmured. Everything seems louder. Daniel knew what she meant. It wasn't sound, it was presence. Billions of people, countless industries, megastructures that stretched into orbit, reactors humming with enough power to mimic small suns. All of it radiated activity, expansion, momentum. And if the architect's warning was true, all of it could be what doomed them. Captain Raylan approached, his footsteps echoing in the metallic corridor. "The Council assigned escorts," he said. "They'll take you to the Central Analysis Tower for further evaluation." Amelia frowned. "Evaluation of what?" Raylan hesitated. "They didn't specify, but I suspect." His gaze sharpened as he looked at Daniel. "They're concerned about the lingering effects of the encounter." Daniel stiffened. "I'm not unstable. I know that," Raylan said quietly, "but the Council doesn't deal in trust. They deal in control." His voice dropped lower. "Careful, they may push harder than you expect." Before Daniel could reply, the bay doors opened and 4 armored guardians stepped inside, their presence a silent reminder of who held the power on this world. They motioned for Daniel and Amelia to follow. Raylan gave a subtle nod of support before turning away, leaving them to the Guardians' escort. As they stepped into the bustling central concourse, Daniel felt the press of humanity all around him, voices, movement, energy. But beneath it all, he sensed something else. A faint hum, almost like the echo he had felt since the encounter. Only now it vibrated in response to something external, something approaching, something aware. He stumbled slightly. Amelia caught his arm, concern flashing across her face. "Daniel, are you all right?" "I felt," he swallowed. "I don't know, but it's getting stronger." One of the guardians turned. "Is there a problem?" Amelia's voice hardened. "He needs space, that is all." The guardian hesitated, but continued walking. As they entered the towering Central Analysis Tower, a structure built from interlaced lattices of reflective alloy, the atmosphere shifted. The interior was cavernous, illuminated by soft indigo light flowing along the walls like currents. Holographic symbols drifted through the air, adjusting themselves in response to their proximity. Amelia eyed them skeptically. "These aren't standard interface glyphs. They're adaptive cognition links," one guardian said. "The Council's scientific division uses them for advanced neurological monitoring." Amelia grimaced. "Monitoring, not analysis." Daniel barely heard them. The vibration within his chest had grown stronger, thrumming in sync with subtle pulses in the tower's infrastructure. It was like 2 frequencies beginning to resonate together, and that terrified him. The Guardians led them into a chamber where Chief Scientist Hale waited, flanked by technicians and hovering instruments. Hale clasped his hands behind his back, wearing an expression that wavered between triumph and suspicion. "Aren, Ward, thank you for your prompt arrival." Daniel stepped forward. "If this is another attempt to discredit what we saw, on the contrary," Hale interrupted smoothly, "the Council has decided your claims warrant further investigation, particularly the visions you described." He gestured to the array of hovering devices, each adorned with rotating fractal patterns. "We've designed non-invasive methods to probe the lingering neural imprints you may have received." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Neural imprints? That implies you already believe something occurred." Hale's smile tightened. "Belief is irrelevant, data guides us, and your companion contains data we require." Daniel met Hale's gaze evenly. "And what if I refuse?" "Then the Council will interpret refusal as a sign of instability, or worse, contamination from an unknown alien intelligence." He stepped closer. "Cooperation is in your best interest." Amelia's fists clenched, but Daniel placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "It's fine, I'll do it." Hale signaled the technicians. "Begin." The instruments floated closer, surrounding Daniel in a rotating sphere. Thin beams of light scanned his temples, chest, and hands, like threads weaving through the air. At first, the sensation was mild. Then the tower itself seemed to respond. The walls pulsed faintly, patterns formed along the alloy, mirroring the rotating fractals. Hale frowned. "Increase focus." The beams sharpened. The hum in Daniel's chest surged in response. The tower dimmed for a moment, lights flickering, systems stuttering. Amelia stepped forward. "Something's wrong, stop the scan." Hale shook his head. We are detecting a harmonic reaction between his neural frequencies and the tower's structure. Fascinating. Continue. Daniel felt pressure behind his eyes, like concepts without shape trying to emerge. He gasped. Stop. The chamber lights flared. Holographic symbols shattered into static. A shockwave rippled through the air, knocking technicians off their feet. Amelia grabbed Daniel as he staggered, his knees buckling. The scan halted as systems automatically shut down. Smoke drifted from several fried terminals. Hale stared, equal parts furious and enthralled. Incredible, he whispered. The imprint is active. You're carrying a resonant echo of those beings, perhaps even a piece of their cognitive lattice. Daniel forced himself to breathe through the residual pain. You're not listening. That resonance is a warning mechanism. It's not meant for experimentation. Hale scoffed. Everything is meant for experimentation. Before Daniel could argue, a piercing alarm sounded throughout the tower. Red indicators flashed along the walls. Guardians rushed in. Marveran's face appeared on the holoscreen, expression carved from steel. Hale, Aren, Ward, report immediately. We have an emergent situation. Hale straightened. What kind of situation? Marveran's eyes locked onto Daniel. Long-range observatories have detected a disturbance at the galactic rim. Something is disrupting space-time on a massive scale. Daniel's heart froze. Is it moving? Yes, Marveran said, and heading towards central space at faster-than-light displacement patterns we cannot map. A cold silence filled the chamber. Daniel felt the resonance in his chest throb like a struck drum. Amelia whispered, "It's aware, it's already looking." Hale's analytical facade faltered. This could be unrelated. Daniel shook his head. It's not unrelated. This is what the architects warned us about. Marveran's voice sharpened. If you know anything relevant, Aren, you need to speak now. Humanity requires answers, not riddles. The tower lights flickered again, holograms blurred. Something unseen pressed against the edges of perception, like a shadow passing behind a veil. Daniel steadied himself, understanding with chilling clarity that whatever drifted toward them from the galactic rim was not merely an event. It was the beginning. He met Marveran's gaze on the holoscreen. What's coming isn't a force we can fight with ships or weapons. His voice trembled, not from fear, but from certainty. It's a principle woven into the universe. And it's moving toward us because it noticed our flame. Amelia stepped beside him, her resolve steeled. We need to act now, not as individuals, not as factions, as a species. Marveran's eyes narrowed. And what action do you propose? Daniel exhaled, feeling the resonance align. We need to change the way we think, the way we exist. We need to stop broadcasting our growth like a flare across the cosmos. We need to evolve together or we will be erased. Hale looked unconvinced. Marveran looked troubled. The alarms continued. The disturbance grew closer. Humanity's timeline had shifted, and the Devouring Continuum had begun its approach. The disturbance at the galactic rim expanded with terrifying speed, though no one could agree on how something so vast could move at all. It wasn't traveling through space in any conventional sense. No warp signatures, no mass displacement, no gravitational footprint. Instead, it warped the fabric of spacetime around it, folding reality inward like ripples curving toward a central drain. Observatories across human-settled systems watched the distortion widen, swallow distant stars, and leave behind a region devoid of anything measurable. Not destroyed, erased. As if the matter that once existed there had never been written into the universe. On Solara Prime, the news fractured society into 1,000 reactions: panic, denial, reverent fear, opportunistic fervor. Authorities suppressed the details, but rumors spread faster than official channels could contain them. Something ancient and cosmic was approaching, and the Council's silence amplified public dread. Within the central analysis tower, Daniel felt the resonance inside him intensify with each passing hour. It pulsed like a heartbeat synced to the approaching distortion. The architect's echo within him was awakening, reacting not with fear, but with urgency. Amelia stayed close, analyzing every tremor of Daniel's condition while navigating the increasing hostility of the Council's scientific division. Hale had doubled down on his obsession, demanding deeper scans and proposing reckless experiments to unlock the knowledge Daniel carried. But Marverin intervened, ordering Hale to stand down and shifting her attention to strategic implications. For the first time, humanity's military strategists and scientists found themselves equally outmatched. 3 hours after the first alarm, Marverin summoned Daniel and Amelia to the strategic core, a chamber located deep beneath the tower. Unlike the luminous architecture above, the core was stark, grey alloy walls reinforced by dense protective layers designed for crisis command. When they entered, the air buzzed with tension. Tactical maps flickered across the room, depicting the galaxy as a swirl of stars, with a dark blot creeping inward from the rim. High-level officials crowded around the central projection. Marverin stood at the forefront, her posture rigid. To her right was Ambassador Terran, his composed demeanor showing hairline fractures. To her left stood Fleet Marshal Aragon, a stern veteran with eyes like scorched metal. He was not accustomed to threats that couldn't be shot, burned, or blasted apart. Marverin turned to Daniel. "We need clarity, now." "What exactly is this phenomenon?" Daniel stepped forward, feeling all eyes on him. "It's the Devouring Continuum, the force that hunts civilizations when they expand too fast." Aragon scoffed. "A myth told by barely corporeal projections on a dead world. We are basing galactic defense policy on hallucinations." Amelia bristled, but Daniel raised a hand to steady her. "It's not a hallucination. And it's not a myth." He pointed to the spreading blot on the map. "Do you have any explanation for that?" Silence. The blot had already reached the region containing 2 outlying research stations. Both had gone dark simultaneously, no distress signals, no debris, no trace signatures, as if they had never existed. Marverin's gaze hardened. "Aren, you said this continuum detects expansion, a flame burning too brightly. Why now? What changed?" Daniel swallowed, dread crawling up his spine. "Humanity crossed a threshold. Our megastructures, our energy output, our rapid colonization, they collectively reached a tipping point. The architects knew this pattern, they lived it, and they fell to it." Hale, who had arrived moments earlier, folded his arms skeptically. "If this continuum is triggered by expansion, then we simply conceal our activities, reduce emissions, curtail growth." Daniel shook his head. "It's too late for that. It has already noticed us." The map flickered again as the blot accelerated. Marverin addressed Hale coldly. "Do you have any alternative explanation for the phenomenon?" Hale hesitated. "No." "Then sit down," she said. The chief scientist obeyed, jaw tight. Marverin refocused on Daniel. "What does it want?" "Nothing," Daniel replied. "It doesn't want, it acts. It eliminates civilizations that unbalance cosmic equilibrium." Terran frowned. "You speak as if you understand its purpose." "I don't," Daniel said. "But the architects did, and they passed that understanding into me." Aragon stepped forward, voice booming. "If this thing erases entire regions of space, it must have an origin, something we can target or disrupt." "You don't understand," Daniel said softly. "It's not a fleet, not a weapon, not an entity in any form we comprehend. It's like gravity, only selective, purposeful. It doesn't move through space, it pulls space into itself. You can't fight it." Aragon's expression twisted in frustration. "There must be something we can do. This council will not endorse surrender." "Not surrender," Daniel said. "Transformation." Marverin's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Daniel exhaled, feeling the resonance flare. "The architects didn't survive by running or fighting. They survived by changing their relationship with energy, matter, and expansion. They evolved beyond physical forms, dispersing themselves into realms the continuum couldn't detect. They stopped being a flame. They became something else." Amelia stepped forward. "Daniel's right. The only survivors from that entire civilization were the projections we encountered. They had converted themselves into patterns of thought, not alive in any biological sense, but not destroyed. The continuum couldn't consume them because they no longer fit its criteria. Hale leaned forward. You're suggesting we abandon corporeal existence, convert ourselves into disembodied consciousness? That is a fantasy bordering on madness. Amelia shot him a glare. Better madness than extinction. Terran raised a trembling hand. Assume we accept this premise. How do we achieve such transformation? Daniel stared at the floor, then lifted his gaze, knowing the truth would unsettle them. They left something behind. Silence swallowed the chamber. Marveron's eyes narrowed. Left what behind? On the dead world, beneath the structure. They didn't just warn us, they passed on the seed of their evolution, a fragment of their cognitive architecture, and it bonded with me. Whispered disbelief rippled around the room. Hale surged to his feet. If this is true, why didn't you say so sooner? Daniel met his gaze with cold intensity. Because you would have tried to dissect it out of me. Hale flinched, confirming Daniel's suspicions. Marveron stepped closer. This seed, what is it supposed to do? Daniel placed a hand on his chest where the resonance pulsed. It's a blueprint, a guide. A path toward becoming something the continuum cannot erase. Amelia's voice softened. The architects didn't just want us to survive. They wanted us to learn from their failure, to rise differently. Marveron paced slowly, absorbing this. If you have this blueprint, can you share it? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. It isn't knowledge in the traditional sense. It's instinctual, conceptual. A map without coordinates. I can feel its direction, but I can't articulate it. Hale snapped. Useless. Not useless, Amelia countered. It means he needs more time, more understanding. When the architects transformed, they didn't do it instantly. It required... An alarm cut her off. A technician stumbled into the room, breathless. The distortion, it just swallowed the Meridian Gate. Marveron's face tightened. That system contains over 300,000 civilians. It doesn't anymore, the technician whispered. The room fell into horrified silence. On the map, the blot expanded with sudden, violent acceleration. The continuum had taken notice and was now actively converging on human space. Aragon slammed a fist onto the table. We need evacuation protocols for the outer colonies. Marveron shook her head. It won't matter. The continuum doesn't move through space. It consumes the pattern of our existence. Retreat won't save us. Daniel stared at the blot, feeling the resonance inside him pulse in rhythm with its advance. For a moment, he wasn't in the room. He was within the approaching void, sensing its structure, its hunger, its purpose, and he realized something chilling. It's accelerating because of me. Amelia's breath caught. Daniel. It felt the architect's imprint when the tower reacted. It felt the echo. It recognized the signature of a civilization it once consumed. Hale stood abruptly. You're saying you've made us more of a target? Daniel nodded slowly. No, I made myself the target. But the continuum doesn't distinguish between individuals and civilizations. To it, we are one flame. Aragon's hand drifted toward a sidearm he wasn't even carrying, pure instinct. If you are a beacon for this thing, Amelia stepped between them. Don't finish that sentence. Marveron raised a hand. No one is killing anyone, but Aren, you need to explain what this means. Daniel's voice shook, but his resolve held. The continuum is coming for me, but it will take all of humanity with me unless we transform fast. Terran's face paled. How fast? Daniel closed his eyes. The resonance answered. Weeks, maybe less. A fragile quiet settled, broken only by distant alarms echoing through the tower's depths. Humanity stood at the edge of annihilation. Marveron exhaled slowly. Then everything must change. Immediately, we set aside politics, factions, disputes. We pool every resource, every mind, every system. Amelia nodded fiercely. We follow the architect's path wherever it leads. Hale, despite his skepticism, finally looked afraid. If Aren truly holds the key, then we need to understand it. We need to begin work now. Aragon crossed his arms. I'll mobilize all fleets for defensive containment, not to stop it, but to buy us time. Terran closed his eyes. And I will begin diplomatic coordination with all settled worlds. Unity at last. Marveron turned to Daniel. And you will show us how to transform. Daniel felt the architect's echo pulse in agreement. I will. Outside, the continuum blot darkened the starlit map. Humanity's flame had been noticed. The only path forward was upward, beyond flesh, beyond fear, beyond the limits that had brought them to the edge of extinction. Transformation had begun. The observatory complex lay on the city's uppermost ridge, a vast lattice of crystalline conduits and sensor pylons angled toward the star-flecked sky. Daniel had visited it once during training, back when he still believed humanity's greatest threats were political, territorial, or technological. Now, as he stepped through its reinforced archway with Amelia beside him and guardians flanking their path, the enormity of what approached pressed against his thoughts like a tide seeking cracks in a wall. Scientists, analysts, and tactical officers crowded the interior platforms, their movements sharp and frantic. The enormous central viewport, an expansive semi-organic screen that projected direct sensory data, glowed with swirling distortions. At first glance, the anomaly resembled a storm of luminescent fractures, but storms obeyed physics. This did not. Marverin stood at the command platform, surrounded by advisors. When she noticed Daniel and Amelia approaching, she dismissed the surrounding officers with a sharp gesture. Her features were composed, but Daniel sensed tension coiled beneath her calm surface. The disturbance has grown, Marverin said without preamble. Its advance is accelerating beyond all predictive models. It isn't following curvature lines or dark space currents. Amelia studied the viewport. Because it doesn't travel, it unfolds, like a structure being assembled across distance. Marverin nodded slowly. That matches what our mathematical teams suggest, but interpretation is limited. The closer it comes, the more our sensors destabilize. Daniel stepped closer to the projection. The distortions rippled outward like expanding filaments, each lined with faint spirals. It reminded him disturbingly of the patterns he had sensed from the architect's presence and of the resonance he now carried. The hum in his chest synchronized faintly with the viewport's glow. It's mapping us, Daniel murmured. It's analyzing the boundary between its state and ours. Amelia's brow furrowed. And once it understands that boundary, it will collapse it, fold us into its framework. Marverin studied them both. You speak as though you possess knowledge far beyond what we've gathered. I will not pretend patience if you hold anything back. Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. The architects did not give us a weapon. They gave us context. They knew this conscious engine would eventually turn its attention toward expanding vulnerabilities. Civilizations like ours, ambitious, radiant, unshielded, create patterns that draw its notice. Amelia added, the more we grow outward, the more clearly we appear against the universal background. It follows gradients of complexity, of awakening. We are its next correction. Marverin folded her arms. If you are correct, we stand on the brink of annihilation, yet you suggest evolution as our answer. What does that mean in practical terms? Daniel hesitated. Words felt insufficient, but a memory surfaced of the architect's luminous threads, weaving knowledge through mental landscapes that transcended matter. It means reconfiguring what it means to be human, Daniel said. Our technology and biology are fragmented systems. Our species behaves like billions of competing signals instead of a cohesive intelligence. The conscious engine senses that dissonance. It identifies us as unstable, wasteful, dangerous. Amelia gestured toward the distortion on the viewport. To survive, we must present a unified pattern, a coherence strong enough that it no longer seeks to overwrite us. Not a hive, not conformity, a resonance. Marverin looked from one to the other, expression sharpened by suspicion but tinged with reluctant consideration. Unifying the species in under a decade would be impossible. We don't have a decade, Daniel said quietly. We have months. A hush settled. The distortion on the screen flickered as if reacting or listening. Marverin pressed a control pad, magnifying a portion of the anomaly. Spirals thickened, splitting into smaller segments that extended like roots seeking purchase. Our physicists believe these filaments represent some form of hyperdimensional scaffolding. If so, the structure spans light years already. Amelia's voice tightened. It's preparing an environment it can inhabit fully. Once the scaffolding aligns with local space, we will lose the ability to act. Everything will resolve into its design. Daniel reached out, not physically, but mentally, probing the resonance within him. The sensation intensified, like a tuning fork responding to a distant vibration. In that moment, an idea crystallized, dangerous, unproven, possibly catastrophic, but necessary. I need to interface with the long-range array, Daniel said. Marverin turned sharply. Absolutely not. The array is experimental and unstable. Linking a human neural field to it could tear your mind apart. It's already linked, Daniel replied. The resonance inside me reacts to the anomaly. If I align myself with the array's output, I might be able to interpret the conscious engine's structure more clearly, or find a flaw. Amelia stepped closer, eyes worried but resolute. You're suggesting you become the bridge between human perception and whatever state that entity occupies. Yes, you might not return, she whispered. Daniel met her gaze. I would rather risk myself than let this thing erase everything humanity has built. Marverin watched the exchange, her expression hardening into the shape of a decision. If this is the only potential advantage we have, I won't deny you, but understand this, failure will not merely kill you, it may draw the entity closer. Daniel nodded. Then we succeed. Amelia took his hand, a rare gesture between them, grounding rather than sentimental. You won't face it alone. I'll anchor you. If the resonance overwhelms your thoughts, I'll bring you back. You always do, Daniel answered. Marverin gestured to the Guardians. Prepare the array chamber, and have medical and cognitive specialists on standby. If he begins to destabilize, I want immediate intervention. The Guardians hurried away. Marverin lowered her voice. Aren, whatever is inside you, do you believe it will help us? Daniel considered the question carefully. It isn't the architects themselves, it's their echo, their memory. They tried to warn us, not control us. And the entity pursuing us, it isn't pursuing, it's fulfilling its nature. That's what makes it unstoppable unless we redefine ourselves. Marverin nodded once, gravely, then let us redefine. The array chamber was a cavernous sphere lined with crystalline threads that pulsed faintly with long-distance sensor currents. Technicians moved quickly, activating stabilizers and preparing neural interfaces designed for remote cognitive synchronization. Daniel entered the central platform, the hum in his chest intensifying as the chamber responded to his presence. Amelia joined him, adjusting the tether device that would link her neural field to his, a stabilizing counterpoint to keep his mind from fracturing under the weight of alien perception. Ready? She asked. Daniel swallowed. As I'll ever be. The technicians activated the array. Thin arcs of luminescence crawled along the walls like veins bursting with light. The chamber darkened except for those pulses. Daniel closed his eyes and reached inward, allowing the resonance to rise. At first it flickered, like faint whispers just out of reach. Then the array amplified it, pulling it into coherence. Shapes formed, layers of geometry unfurled. He felt Amelia beside him, her awareness brushing against his, anchoring him with warmth and clarity. The universe shuddered. Daniel gasped as his perception stretched beyond the confines of his body, reaching through the array, through the sensor network, into the anomaly itself. Patterns swarmed around him, spiral waves, shifting lattices, recursive symmetries that rebuilt themselves infinitely. The conscious engine was not a being. It was an algorithm of existence, a cosmic editor, a universal architect of balance. And it had found them. Amelia's voice echoed through the tether, steady and grounding. Daniel, stay with me. What do you see? Daniel forced himself to focus. Through the swirling patterns, through the overwhelming logic of a structure older than stars, he saw something else. A fracture, tiny, imperfect. A point where the conscious engine's calculations hesitated. I see a breakpoint, Daniel whispered. A flaw in its pattern, something it cannot resolve. Amelia's grip tightened through the tether. What is it? Daniel's breath trembled. Us, he said. It cannot understand choice, human unpredictability, true uncertainty. It cannot resolve what it cannot predict. The realization crashed through him like a wave. The conscious engine sought order. Humanity embodied chaos wrapped in potential. Evolution through uncertainty, innovation through contradiction, a species defined by turning limitations into possibility. The conscious engine could not erase them cleanly, not yet. The flaw was small, but it was real, and it was the only advantage they possessed. Daniel pushed deeper toward the breakpoint, only for the patterns to twist violently in response. The conscious engine had detected the probe. Amelia cried out as the tether jolted. Systems across the chamber flared. Lights flickered wildly. Daniel, pull back, she shouted. It's collapsing the interface. He couldn't. The resonance had locked him in place. The conscious engine surged toward him, its patterns compressing into a single impossible vector, a presence without form, cold and infinite. A question, a demand, a correction. The chamber shook violently. Amelia's hands gripped his face. Come back, Daniel, come back. The universe folded around him. The conscious engine reached through the array like a converging storm, and Daniel fell. When awareness returned, he lay on the chamber floor, Amelia kneeling beside him, her face pale with fear and determination. Marvaran and technicians surrounded them, alarmed voices echoing. Daniel's chest burned with lingering resonance, but his mind was intact. Barely, Amelia exhaled shakily. I thought I lost you. Daniel pushed himself upright. You held me together, and I found something. Marvaran leaned in. Tell us. Daniel met her gaze with steady conviction. The conscious engine has a flaw. It cannot predict us. It cannot resolve what we might become. That gives us a path forward. Marvaran's eyes narrowed. A path to survive? A path, Daniel repeated, to evolve faster than it can adapt, and we must begin now. Outside the chamber, alarms blared again. The anomaly had accelerated. The conscious engine was coming, and humanity had only one chance left. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparation, experimentation, and revelation. Humanity's systems shifted into overdrive, but not in the familiar ways of military mobilization or industrial expansion. Ships were deployed, but not to fight. Factories produced tools not for war, but for recalibration of minds, for interface with networks, for simulation of thought patterns at unprecedented scale. Entire research colonies were repurposed into cognitive labs where neural architects, philosophers, and engineers worked side by side, guided by Daniel and Amelia. The resonance within Daniel pulsed almost constantly, a subtle hum beneath his awareness, a tether to the architect's echo. Each day it grew stronger, more precise, more insistent. Daniel had learned to navigate it, to translate its abstract patterns into instructions humans could understand. The initial attempts were messy. Early simulations of human consciousness into abstract patterns caused neurological strain, seizures, and sometimes fatalities. Critics called it madness, yet Marvaran and Amelia insisted they persevere. We have no alternative, she said repeatedly. And we will not be afraid of our own limits. Amelia stayed close to Daniel at all times, acting as his anchor and translator. She spent hours connected to him via neural tethers, helping interpret the architect's guidance, ensuring his mind did not fragment under the strain of carrying humanity's potential. The process was exhausting. Sleep became optional, food a secondary concern. Daniel felt himself shifting, slowly, almost imperceptibly. Portions of his cognition began to operate beyond conventional perception. He could sense patterns in human thought across the neural networks they had linked, subtle deviations, potentials for alignment, and importantly, weaknesses in the conscious engine's awareness. The Devouring Continuum continued its inexorable approach, consuming sectors of space at ever-increasing speed. Systems that had been vibrant hubs of research, colonization, and trade fell silent, leaving only dark voids where stars once shone. Each loss was catalogued, studied, and fed back into Daniel's resonance calculations. Humanity's survival depended on understanding the pattern of the predator's approach, not merely its motion, but its logic. The breakthrough came when Daniel realized the conscious engine's limitation. It could process systems of staggering complexity, but it relied on predictability. It could not model true creativity, human choice, or the chaos inherent in free will. The realization sparked a plan. If they could synchronize human consciousness into a coherent yet unpredictable lattice, a coordinated resonance that the engine could sense but not fully resolve, they might create a form of camouflage or even deterrence. Execution required unparalleled coordination. Billions of minds across dozens of star systems had to align while retaining the essential unpredictability that defined humanity. Amelia helped design a neural interface that projected Daniel's resonance through the interstellar communications grid. It was crude at first, a pulse broadcast over quantum entanglement nodes that would amplify the imprint of coordinated consciousness. The effect was immediate. Across connected networks, subtle shifts began. Thoughts, patterns, and impulses aligned into resonant sequences that mirrored the architect's instructions. Observatories monitoring the approaching continuum registered an anomaly. The distortion slowed, a subtle hesitation in the vast filamentary expansion. The conscious engine had noticed the alignment. Daniel and Amelia monitored the readings, hearts pounding. "It's aware," Daniel murmured. "And it doesn't understand." The realization was exhilarating and terrifying. One misalignment, one breakdown in coordination, and the engine could perceive the incoherence as another form of expansion, another flame to consume. Marveran's authority became absolute. Systems that had been in competition or conflict were now pooled under centralized guidance. Scientists, engineers, philosophers, and citizens were mobilized not for combat, but for cognitive synthesis. Entire populations participated voluntarily, entrained through immersive neural interfaces that linked thought, emotion, and intention across light years. The process was grueling. Fatigue was omnipresent. Many doubted, resisted, or broke under the strain. But the resonance, the architect's echo in Daniel, adapted, guiding, smoothing, redirecting. Weeks passed. Each day, the conscious engine approached, consuming more sectors, yet each day, the aligned human resonance subtly adjusted the pattern. The engine slowed, hesitation growing, its hyperdimensional lattice pulsing in response to something it could not fully process. On the 33rd day, Daniel perceived the moment. A massive cluster of uninhabited star systems had been consumed, their matter folded into the engine's structure. But it faltered at the edge of human space, unable to resolve the coherent unpredictability now radiating from every connected mind. Amelia's hand rested on his shoulder. "We are holding it," she whispered, but only barely. Daniel's gaze swept across the synchronized grids of consciousness, across the neural harmonics of humanity's billions. He felt the weight of every life, every thought, every dream, and he understood the true meaning of the architect's warning. Humanity's strength was not in firepower, nor in numbers, nor even in expansion. It was in the ability to adapt, to imagine, to unify unpredictably. To survive, they had to become an organism of thought, one vast, multifaceted, and impossible to erase. The conscious engine probed again, this time with forceful pulses designed to detect hidden instabilities. But the alignment held. For the first time, the anomaly's advance stuttered, then paused. Observatories across connected systems registered the same effect. The distortions ceased to propagate, filaments halted, and the blottred void of consumed space no longer grew. Marveran's voice trembled slightly, a mixture of disbelief and awe. "It stopped for now." Hale, despite himself, muttered, I don't understand how." Daniel opened his eyes. "It can't understand us, not yet. We are too unpredictable, too coherent, too alive in a way it cannot calculate." Amelia's voice was firm. "And if we maintain this alignment, if we keep improving," Daniel smiled faintly, "then we evolve beyond its perception. The architect's path isn't just survival, it's ascendance. Even as the pause held, the team understood the fragility of the moment. One mistake, one misalignment, and the devouring continuum would resume its inexorable march. But humanity had learned the fundamental lesson. Their power did not reside in domination of matter, but in mastery of cognition, coordination, and choice. For the first time in their history, humanity confronted a threat that could erase stars, and instead of fleeing, they adapted, unified, and rose to meet it. And as the resonance pulsed, spreading across the stars, Daniel realized something profound. The architects had left not just knowledge, but a promise. Humanity could survive, humanity could ascend, but only if they dared to become something greater than themselves, an echo of potential far larger than any one individual, a pattern unbroken and uncontainable, radiating through the universe. The conscious engine lingered at the edge of human-settled space, a massive, unknowable presence, suspended in a momentary hesitation that felt almost sentient. Daniel and Amelia remained tethered at the central neural interface, the resonance within Daniel's mind now intertwined with billions of conscious signals spanning multiple star systems. Humanity had become a living lattice of thought, fragile yet astonishingly coherent. The pause was not victory, only the calm before a test of endurance. Even as aligned minds pulsed in perfect synchronization, small disruptions rippled through the network, emotional spikes, fear, doubt, disagreement. Each threatened to unravel the careful pattern. Daniel felt the architect's echo respond, subtle but insistent, guiding him toward stabilizing sequences, adjusting the harmonics to compensate for unpredictability. Amelia whispered, her voice taut with tension, "We can't hold this forever. The engine will adapt. It will try again." Daniel nodded. "And we will adapt faster. We are learning at a rate it cannot calculate." Each moment strengthens the coherence. Across human space, observers witnessed a phenomenon unlike any before. Sensors registered the unconsumable human pattern, a web of unpredictable yet synchronized activity so dense that it distorted local spacetime itself. The conscious engine probed, pulse after pulse, like a predator testing its prey. And each time it recoiled, unable to fully comprehend the chaotic order. It began to withdraw, filamentary structures retracting, the previously devoured sectors remaining intact, but dimly scarred by the echoes of attempted consumption. Marverin addressed the assembly in the strategic core, her voice tight with disbelief and relief. "It's retreating, for now." Hale, pale and trembling, muttered, "Inconceivable. Logic dictates it should continue. There's nothing here to threaten it." Amelia's hand found Daniel's, grounding him as he processed the neural resonance still flooding his mind. "Logic isn't enough," he said softly. "It never was. We are beyond logic. That's why we survive." Across the network, humanity continued its alignment, refining the pulses, integrating more systems, stabilizing the neural lattice. With each refinement, the conscious engine's advance slowed, then paused entirely, suspended by the human pattern's unpredictability. It was alive, but it could not comprehend the nature of life it faced. Months passed. The devouring continuum lingered like a shadow at the galactic rim, no longer consuming, yet no longer indifferent. Daniel's body and mind bore the strain of continuous resonance, but he had learned to channel it, translating the architect's blueprint into actionable patterns of consciousness, spreading the knowledge to engineers, scientists, and even ordinary citizens through neural augmentation. The transformation was not immediate, nor painless. Entire populations adapted or resisted, many succumbing to mental fatigue, while others achieved extraordinary integration. Humanity's intelligence expanded, no longer limited to individual minds, but interwoven across systems, sharing insights instantaneously, learning collectively, evolving faster than any single human could imagine. Daniel looked toward the viewport, tracing the outline of the slowed and faltering filaments. The conscious engine was no longer merely a predator. It had become a mirror reflecting humanity's potential. It could not erase them, not now, perhaps not ever, as long as the species retained the capacity for coherent unpredictability, for choice, for evolution. Amelia's voice cut through the hum of their connection. "Daniel, there's a message embedded in the resonance." He focused, letting the pulse of the collective consciousness guide him. Within the echo of the architects, a pattern of possibilities unfolded, offering paths for expansion not of territory or weapons, but of thought, energy, and understanding. "They left us a roadmap," he whispered. "Not just to survive, but to ascend." Marverin entered the chamber quietly, her expression softened by something approaching awe. "And if we follow it," Daniel met her gaze, exhausted but resolute, "we may not ever be the same species again, but we will endure. And one day we will explore the universe not as prey, but as a force it cannot ignore, intelligent, resilient, and unpredictable." Hale, despite himself, whispered in reverence, "They survived in you, through you." Daniel shook his head slightly. "Not through me alone, through all of us." The architect's echo was a catalyst. Humanity made the choice to become something more. Outside, the dark filaments of the devouring continuum trembled, as if testing the pattern, probing for weaknesses, only to find none. Slowly it began to recede, folding its hyperdimensional scaffolding back toward the galactic rim, leaving a corridor of intact, yet transformed, space behind. The victory was tentative, but it was a beginning. Across the neural networks, across planets and colonies, humanity pulsed in unison, a coherent yet unpredictable resonance that no cosmic predator could fully calculate. Daniel exhaled, feeling the architect's echo stabilize within him. "We've done it," he said softly. Amelia smiled, though her eyes betrayed exhaustion. "For now." He looked outward toward the stars beyond the filaments. They had survived the first challenge, but the universe was vast, filled with unknown forces. Yet for the first time, Daniel felt not fear, but clarity. Humanity's potential was infinite, not because of their strength, their technology, or their numbers, but because of their capacity to adapt, to think, and to choose. Marverin's voice cut through the quiet, firm yet filled with awe. "We have witnessed the impossible. We have endured." Daniel turned toward her, then to Amelia, and across the interconnected consciousness, he could feel the pulse of every human mind. "We will continue," he said. "We will grow, we will rise, and nothing, not even the deepest, oldest forces of the cosmos, will erase us again." And as the stars beyond human space shone, fragile and radiant, a new understanding took root. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged not merely alive, but fundamentally transformed. The architect's warning had been heeded, their lesson internalized, and now, for the first time, humanity could truly claim its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as a species defined by resilience, ingenuity, and the indomitable capacity to endure, evolve, and ascend. The devouring continuum, incomprehensible and vast, retreated into the dark rim, but Daniel and Amelia knew it had learned too. And so had humanity. The journey was only beginning.